So, when we get into the question of a capital of controversy, what is a memorial born of controversy and compromise? Simply the better answer or question is, what isn't a memorial born of controversy and compromise? Because one of the things that we'll address tonight, or one of the entities we'll address tonight, is one of the more recent controversial memorials in downtown Washington, that commemorating the generation of the Second World War. Building a memorial to the so-called greatest generation is of itself not controversial, but where to put it and what it's going to look like certainly are two of the more consequential and controversial questions to arise out of that. The controversy on Capitol Hill and in the White House and in the political realm of this republic, it is all borne out in this very fabric of the National Mall. It is in many respects our most sacred space in the entirety of the country, because the National Mall symbolizes all that we have been, everything that we are, and everything we aspire to be. So as a result, anybody who wants to build a memorial there, you've got to go through a lot of effort to get anything done. What we have now is the absolute need to memorialize the president whose vision this all was. And by 1832, the centennial of Washington's birth, the president had been dead now for 33 years, buried down at Mount Vernon in 1799. As the Republic sought ways to honor and revere the memory of Washington, they sought ways to create a monument to him. So, a monument to him was decreed by the Congress in 1783. As we have found as citizens of this republic, Congress can decree things. They can pass laws saying that we should do these things, but they don't allocate the funding to do it. So there's no funding to build a monument to George Washington in this federal city. But 1832, again, the debate is raging. Shouldn't his legacy be enough? Why do we need to build why do we need to build the tallest building in the world to remember George Washington? Everyone's going to remember George Washington for all times. So here is the Washington Monument. Federal government's proposed no money for it. It's 1832. The country has yet to build this thing that had been authorized in 1783. So the Washington National Monument Society is allowed by the Congress to use that site designated for the monument, and also to begin a public subscription campaign to raise money to begin the process of building the Washington Monument. And on the 4th of July, 1848, the cornerstone for what would be a 600-foot tall obelisk surrounded by a 100-foot tall circular colonnade at its base, the work got underway. It took 6 years to raise the structure up to about a third of its intended height. And there was a hostile takeover of the Monument Society. The know-nothings, as they were called, voted in their own officers. So even if you wanted to donate to this project, to which Monument Society would one donate to allow work to continue? Now, one thing that many people don't know, hopefully many of you in this audience do, that the view from the Lincoln Memorial, there's a bookend to it. Because not only does the National Mall hold alive the memory of George Washington and his great monument in the middle of the city, but we talked earlier about building a memorial to Lincoln as the person who helped save Washington's Union. So Lincoln sits in his chair, looks at the monument to Washington, and if it were clear and he could see through it, what Lincoln would see at the other end of the mall 2 miles away is the man who helped bring about that military success for him. Also dedicated in 1922 was the memorial to General Ulysses S. Grant. Lieutenant General Grant comes about as a result of the McMillan Commission's plans for a reunion of soldiers on Union Square at the head of the National Mall. And Grant and the flanking figures of the cavalry and artillery would be there, and they'd look 2 miles down the mall to Lincoln. So Lincoln and Grant are bookends. They are built as a pair. They were dedicated as a pair, and they are the bookends of the National Mall. But in the middle of that Thomas Jefferson Memorial, the commission whittled down all the designs for a statue to 6. President Roosevelt demanded that all 6 models be brought to him in the White House, and he rejected all 6. He said, give me part of that one and give me part of that one and submit a new design. The new design put forward is that which we see in the middle of that chamber. So not only does that memorial stand where it stands, look like it looks, and have a statue as it appears, the only reasons for all of those, Franklin D. Roosevelt. This great memorial is now a beacon. It's an icon. It is a place where one cannot imagine being controversial, that anything bad would have come out of that. This is the reason for why you have a memorial to Korean War veterans and World War II veterans. At no point in the history of this republic has the United States honored the veterans of a war in Washington, D.C. until 1982, when that memorial to the Vietnam veterans of the United States was dedicated near Veterans Day, November 13th, 1982. Up to that point, unit memorials have been allowed, generals and admirals memorials have been allowed, but never a memorial to the veterans of an entire war. This is the first time. And it's a very, very marked departure from any other memorial in Washington, D.C. That certainly is going to generate an enormous storm of controversy. Korean veterans, the forgotten war. The struggle to create this memorial was as tough. The design competition was won by a team of landscape architects from my alma mater, Penn State University. Their design had 38 soldiers marching in a line toward the American flag. That design won. That design also had to be put forward into a group of architects from the area and had to go through all those commissions. And after all the work was done, they whittled that design down from 38 soldiers to 19. So that then led to compromise. Right up behind the field of service of 19 grew another granite wall, this time California granite. Black, it's reflective, and it has on it the reflections of all 19 of the soldiers. So you get 38th parallel. And along that wall are the images of 2,400 American service personnel that were in support of all of those frontline soldiers. This memorial comes about by May of 1997, and within it we have what was meant to solve the controversy. Everyone on earth knows that Franklin Roosevelt, from the age of 39, had been incapacitated by the effects of polio. He was in a wheelchair. He was forced to walk with heavy steel leg braces and a cane on the arm of an aide or one of his grown sons. He could not walk again unaided beyond 1921. If he could lead a country during the defining crises of the 20th century, there's no limitation on earth that could keep anyone down. Versus others who thought, well, he took every pain and effort to hide it from people. So how do you solve the controversy? Neil Estern, the sculptor, he put a cape on him. He put on what Roosevelt frequently wore, a naval officer's cape, which was clearly a nod to his favorite branch of the military service. But what does it do? It hides one half of his body like Roosevelt tried to keep hidden from the world. He was in a wheelchair. But the one edge of the cape opens up to see his withered leg, so that you can clearly see he could not stand or walk unaided. So our final story tonight will be this World War II memorial, because it's involved a lot of things. It's involved the fact that Thomas Jefferson's memorial was being built during the war. Franklin Roosevelt was president, of course, commander-in-chief during the war up until his death in April of 1945. The big objection to this, not the fact that the World War II generation does not deserve a memorial, but you can't build it there, some argued, because it's going to block the view of the Lincoln Memorial. Well, we can find that after all the compromises came into being, it's now a frame for the Lincoln Memorial. It doesn't block it at all. In fact, it's been lowered into the ground so that when you go into it, you know you're walking into a defined space set up for a particular purpose. Thank you all very, very much.